London is not just some city. Its spirit stands outside of time. Certain places have influenced its citizens. It is not only a setting, but a presence, a character in various films, novels, and poems. My name is Philip Röttgers, and I search for London's spirit. I think there are two particular ways to explore the powerful and mysterious place that is London: through literature and through walking. Follow me into a secret world. Follow me to London beyond time and place. In this series, I will explore its spirit by walking the city and talking to London enthusiasts. I invite you to join me. Together, we will discover London beyond time and place. This is Talks Beyond Time and Place.
Hello everybody to Talks Beyond Time and Place. My name is Philip Röttgers and my guest today is Richard Jones. Hello Richard.
Good day.
Richard Jones is one of London's leading walking tour guides, if I may say so. He started in 1982, I found out, which is not that long ago actually.
Not that long ago, just a few years, years.
Right, yeah. And I think you're a Blue Badge tour guide also. Yep. And you're an author, you're a broadcaster. You've written, I believe, over 20 or even 30 books on various subjects.
Over 20. I've not quite made the 30 yet.
Oh, soon. I think you will reach them soon.
That's it.
Yeah. On various subjects, from Jack the Ripper to Charles Dickens to Haunted London to Haunted Britain, and he appears regularly on international television as an expert on these topics. And I believe you're also a lecturer on the course for training new guides, if I'm correct.
I was, yes. I'm not anymore, but I was. I did that for 5 years. Yeah.
Oh yeah, nice. Okay, so welcome, Richard. Thank you for joining us. There was only a very brief glimpse into what you do and what you've done in the last 38 years. But my first question is, are you a born Londoner?
No, surprisingly, and I think you find lots of people who do guiding in London,
yes.
I suppose in any city, aren't necessarily natives to that city. Because I think if you're a native to a city, you take it for granted. Yeah. Whereas if you come new to a city, then there's a specialness. You can see that the outsider always sees the good in a place.
Yeah, I've heard that already from various people now, and from various tour guides. Yeah. I can imagine. So where do you come from? If you don't
I originally came. I was born and bred in Stoke-on-Trent, which was in the Midlands.
Oh, I see.
But I've lived in London since late 1977. So I'm more of a Londoner than I ever was a Potter.
Yeah, I see. Okay. So as I said, you've been doing your tours for almost 40 years now, which nobody of our viewers will believe when they look at you, but
too kind.
Yeah, I know. Can you tell us how and when you decided to become a tour guide?
Yes, in fact, it was a strange way into it actually, because I came to London, as I said, in 1977, and I got a job in the civil service, and I worked for the Office of Fair Trading as a clerical assistant. And I absolutely hated it. It was just so dull and so boring. And so I was there for 18 months, and then I decided, and this was the time that the punk rock movement was on in London. Yeah. So I decided to leave and become a punk folk singer. I actually used to perform at the Troubadour, oddly enough, the club in Earl's Court, or the coffee bar in Earl's Court.
Yeah.
And they used to have a Monday night session where you could go along and just perform. So I went along there and performed. And then I left the civil service to become a punk folk singer.
Which you're not today. You haven't done it.
No, I had a higher opinion of my abilities than most other people did. And so then I went and worked in a shipping company for a few months. And then I saw an advert for postmen, mailmen in the City of London. And I thought, that'd be a nice job. So I applied for the job, and I got taken on as a postman in King Edward Building, which is now Bank of America Merrill Lynch. But it was right by St. Paul's Cathedral. So my area was the area in the City of London, and I started seeing all these places. And I thought, these are really interesting. So in those days, being a postman was a fantastic job because you got so much free time. The unions were very strong and you only had to do like an hour work, but then you got 2 hours off. So I spent my 2 hours off in the Guildhall Library learning all about London. And then I used to talk to the postman about it, saying, do you know, that's such and such a place. And the postman were quite interested in the stories that I would tell. And then one of them, or two of them, came up to me and said, look, we've got some friends coming over from America. Would you take us round one day? So I said, well, I'll do that. So I took them round and thoroughly enjoyed it. It was fantastic. And I, to be honest, I didn't even know you could do this for a career then. And I just, I thought there was something that university lecturers did when they retired, or teachers did when they retired. And they liked it. And then, so one day I put an advert in Time Out for a ghost walk. Haunted, it was called Haunted City, it was called. Yeah. And I did that from Bank, and 18 people turned up on that walk, and I just loved it. And I thought I'll do this full time. So I left the post office, and I've done this ever since. And that was, I say that was, sorry, that was 1982. Yeah, and I've been going since.
Yeah, and you're doing it wonderfully. I mean, I did a ghost walk with you. Is it still the same walk as it was back then?
No, it's changed an awful lot since back then. Okay. In those days, when I was younger then, so I could walk further. But no, it used to. I mean, I was so enthused by it. I mean, it would take me 2.5, 3 hours to do the walk, and then I started changing. And the thing with the ghost stories is and I think any story really, it evolves over time. So it's basically my initially I was more sort of a factual guide. I liked, you know, artifacts, but then gradually I came to the storytelling became the strong thing I saw the strength in. Yes. So I started working on the stories, making them more dramatic, and then when I wrote my first book on ghosts was Walking Haunted London. And I remember sending it in to the editor. The editor sent it back and said, "Oh, it's not very atmospheric, is it?" Because I tried to be factual. So then I went free rein and I started hamming it up in the text. And they said, "Oh, we love this." So and that comes. So then the storytelling became an integral, which I think Ghost Walk should be. Yes. You know, you don't just want boring in this stage, but you know, you want a good story. Right. And so that's it. And then, of course, different tours are different. So Dickens is a different thing to the ghost tour, as Jack the Ripper is different as well. But yes, it's so I try and change, or not change the locations, because I think I've got the locations now, but I try and find out more about the stories. So I'll get told new stories and updated versions, and I incorporate them. Oh yeah. So it never gets boring. You always find new things to explore and yes. And because of what I do, because I've got to know a lot of people in the area where I do my walks, I get told stories by them. They'll come out. There's a security guard who'll come out all the time and say, yeah, got to tell you. Never guess what happened last night. I was in the office. Great. And I get these fantastic updates, and then I'll thought, oh, put that on the walks.
That's awesome. That's nice. Yeah. So you already mentioned Dickens and Jack the Ripper. Of course, you have a wide range of tours and topics. So I think you also did Shakespeare, and you do Inns of Court and
Inns of Court.
Yeah. Yes, sorry, the Beatles, and even Harry Potter, I think. And so, is there any aspect or part of London that you do not cover or do not know?
No, in fact, I do the whole of London. I mean, there are certain places where, I mean, to me, the route is as important as the facts, because I think you have to have a really good route that every time your group turns the corner, I want the group to go, wow. Yeah. You know, that there's something there that catches their eye, and I think every corner turn should have a moment. I call it the nod factor, which is when people turn a corner and they turn to the person next to them, they nod, and I'm so glad I found this. And it's so I think every tour should, the route is as much a part of the tour as the stories and the facts are. Yes. So I do that. But there are parts of London where you can't do that so much. I mean, for a classic example is Sherlock Holmes, because Sherlock Holmes is so difficult to do as a tour, because for two reasons. Firstly, Baker Street has only got a few Sherlock Holmes locations. But of course, Baker Street is what everybody associates with Sherlock Holmes.
Right, yeah.
So it's a tricky one to pull off because, you know, you've got to do, you know, you have to sort of, there's a lot of muse behind it. So whereas the best Sherlock Holmes route is round Piccadilly, Pall Mall, Strand, around there, because you've got so many but if you don't do it from Baker Street, a lot of people think, oh, what's wrong with that then? There's there's nothing there.
But you can include the Sherlock Holmes pub. I think that's
that's the beauty of doing Piccadilly. You can do the Sherlock Holmes pub, you can do the Athenaeum, which is where Mycroft was a member of, and things like that. But the other problem with Sherlock Holmes is very few people have actually read the stories. They've seen it on TV. But they haven't read the stories. So when you're talking about the Blue Carbuncle or the naval treaty at Charing Cross at the Charing Cross Hotel, you often get blank looks from people. I find this a lot with European student groups, that they'll book a Sherlock Holmes tour, and I'll start talking about Blue Carbuncle or naval treaty, and they think, but when do we get to Benedict Cumberbatch? And I'm thinking,
I mean, you could do a tour around the filming locations, maybe.
Exactly. Yeah. And of course, that's the thing. I mean, but again, the filming locations are spread out, which makes so it's an underground tour. You have to go about bus and underground, because I mean the big one was by St. Bartholomew's Hospital. You had the phone box that was where he jumped, and that phone box became a mecca for Sherlock Holmes fans from all over the world. Although it's gone now, sadly the phone box is no more. It's they've rebuilt. But of course, Speedy's Cafe's still there up off Euston Road, and
but I read that they're gonna close it.
That's good. There's so many places this year have fallen victim to COVID, and so London's going to probably be a very different place. Pubs are closing. There's a lot of pubs that won't be open again. So I think COVID has generally changed the landscape, as it has in many places in the world.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, this is also a bit of typically for the London spirit, the constant change in a way. I mean, this is typical for London. Yeah.
Well, that's the beauty, as you capture so well in your book, that the constant change of London. That it's and I think that's the thing. London's a spiritual place. It's a place, you can get under the skin of London in a way you can't. There's not many cities that you really can immerse yourself in the way you can in London.
That's true. I definitely agree with that. Yeah. So you basically say, or I wanted to ask how you develop your tours, but you basically explained that a little bit. I mean, the route is important, but you have to find certain places that fit into a story that fits the topic of the tour. And I think I read on your homepage the Harry Potter tour. You did a Harry Potter tour or a Harry Potter guide. Basically, this came from a trip to the city with your family, right?
It did. I did. I mean, I call them my kids, but they're in their 20s now, so they're both at university. But when the Harry Potter films came out, we basically used to watch a film, and I'm the worst person to watch a film with, especially if the film's got a London location. And my kids, they hate watching films with me, because I'll be going, oh, it's that location, and they go, Dad, shut up, all right. But with Harry Potter, it's quite nice, because I'd see the location. I think, oh, I know that location, and it actually came out of the fact that we'd watch the films and I'd take them round, and then my eldest son Thomas was doing the Great Fire of London when he was in primary school, and as it so happened, when I was doing my ghost walk one Saturday night, there were 3 night buses parked up around Bank Station, and they were filming the night bus scene where the night bus drives through London. And they actually had 3 night buses for that scene where when they go through the junctions and everything, and a couple of his friends' parents said, when you go and do the Great Fire, would you take our kids with you? So I said, yeah, no problem. So I took them out, and we were coming back through Leadenhall Market. I just mentioned to one of the kids that I'd seen the night bus when I was in London. And he said, well, is it real then? I said, no. I said, they were filming. I said, if you look there, and this was in Leadenhall Market, I said, that was the Leaky Cauldron in the first Harry Potter film. And they went, wow. And I thought, do you know what? you could actually do quite a nice tour of this. Now, what I didn't want to do with Harry Potter was because it was like a family thing. It was something we'd done as a family. So I thought, well, I don't really want to charge for it because, so I put this online free print off Harry Potter tour that did a full day in London, because it suddenly struck me that we could actually go to London for a day and not spend a penny, apart from maybe for lunch, but you know, not spend a fortune on stuff. And if you take a packed lunch, there's plenty of parks. So I thought I'll put that together for families. So I did a downloadable tour, and you know, and it went really well. So it's, you know, people downloaded it. I used to get thank you emails off people and say, you know, oh, thanks for that. And so it's almost part of, you know, the kids grew up with it, because when the first one came out, they were maybe 3 or 4. And of course, going right through to the last one, then they were just gone into their teens, by which time they didn't want to go around with me anymore. But I used to make them.
Yeah, but I think this is a great idea, a wonderful idea, especially for a family to spend a day like that and have the opportunity to visit these locations. I think this is a really nice idea. So was there something like on all your tours and all these years, like the most surprising fact that you've learned about London, or the most interesting story that you've heard or learned? Or is there, maybe you can't say there was one particular thing, I don't know.
Do you know, there are so many places in London where you just think, oh, it's a fantastic story. But there are certain locations. I mean, for example, one of my favorite, which I honestly didn't know until a few years ago, was that St. John's Churchyard in Hampstead, where you've got an overspill burial ground there, and Peter Pan is buried in that churchyard. And it's the grave of the Llewellyn Davis family, who were the Lost Boys that J.M. Barrie based, or the boys that Peter Pan he told the story to. But the entire family, their parents, were buried in St. John's overspill burial ground, and it's like a little Peter Pan corner, because you've got the Llewellyn Davis grave, and then next to that you've got the de Maria grave, George de Maria and his son Sir Gerald de Maria. Now, Sir Gerald de Maria was the first person to play Captain Hook on stage at the Duke of York's Theatre.
Okay, yeah.
And he's buried next to what is the grave of Peter Pan. But the reason that he's buried next to them is because Sylvia Llewellyn Davis, who was the mother of the boys, is in fact his sister. She was actually Sylvia de Maria before she married Arthur Llewellyn Davis. So you've got so that was one thing that was a surprise. But I mean, this year, for example, I've been going around filming London.
Yes, I know.
It's a fantastic time to film it, because there's nobody there. So,
right.
And you can get locations that you can't normally get.
I mean, what you do, I think you really, through these videos that you did in the last month, you really managed to take people back to London with these videos. And also, I was wondering, how do you choose these locations? Do you know the places, or do you research them and then get to know them?
What I've been doing, because quite a few of them I know already, so I do the locations. But certainly quite a few of them, what I've done is I've thought, I just want to go and explore. I'm just going to go and explore. So, for example, I'll go to an area like I will go down to Docklands, and I'll just walk. So I'll make my way around Docklands, and I'll think, wow. And so that's how, you know, you make some fantastic, I mean, that's the great thing about London, that you can, if you get lost in London, you make some amazing discoveries. Right. And that's what I like to do. And it's, I mean, I found one of the narrow house, which was this tiny, this house is about 6 feet across with all the flats in it. And I think it's incredible. And then the area down by Docklands that I'd never been to before. Right. Where you've got the lighthouse, you've got all the artworks and everything. And
you found the little shipwreck. I was looking for the postcard with the books.
With the shipwreck on it. Yeah. That was just amazing, and I would have missed that. But I was walking up. Funnily enough, I was doing a blog on the Princess Alice disaster of 1878. So that's what that came from, because I went down to film the area where the ship had been, where the boat had gone down, or the steamer had gone down, and I was just walking around, getting it from all different angles, and because of that, I was jumping down onto the shoreline and clambering down. and then I spotted this this ruined barge. And it's completely at high tide, it's completely submerged, but at low tide, it's got all the grass. And I thought, wow, it's fantastic.
Yeah, it is.
And luckily, it was low tide, so I saw it, and I just went down onto. And to me, that's more special than St. Paul's. You know, walking around St. Paul's and the well-known sites.
Yes,
because there's no one there, and you know, and then people you find there are anglers. So you find the anglers, and so you can go and have a nice chat with the anglers, and they'll tell you about, oh, I caught this, I caught that today, I caught I've got an eel.
but yeah,
that's been.
I also think this is even more special than, as you said, walking around in St. Paul's or things like that. I agree. Do you know how old this shipwreck is?
No, the only thing I can find out about it is what's on there's a website called Derelict London, and they just encountered it on a when they were doing a walk along there. Oh, yeah. So they came basically like I did. They just came across it. But they just identified as I think as a Thames lighter barge. Mm-hmm. Whether it is or not, I don't know. So I mean, I'd love to know more about it, but at the moment I can't, because all the local study places are closed. So I can't. Sure. So and whether there would be anything there. But I think the nice thing like that is it leaves it to your imagination to sort of imagine what it was. So I've got this colourful, you know, I think it was a pirate ship. But,
yes, yeah, that's the beauty of it. You can imagine all sorts of things. When you see things like
it can be what you want it to be.
Yeah, right, definitely. So you don't do tours on the streets right now, right? You only do them you only do virtual tours right now.
I started doing the tours around the streets again in July. Mm-hmm. And then Boris closed. We got closed down again. So it's so what we've decided now to do is, because I don't know what it's like in Germany, but I honestly think we're meant to be coming out of it on the 2nd December, but they still haven't said how we will be coming out of it.
I think it will be longer here. I think we will, but we'll see. There's nothing sure. So
and they're talking here now that they're going to relax it over Christmas for 5 days.
Yeah.
But because of that, we're going to have an extended lockdown in January for 25 days.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see where all this leads. But sorry.
Well, the interesting thing is that we are it probably doesn't seem it to us because it's such a pain and it's, you know, so disruptive, but we are actually living through history.
We do. Yes.
Yeah. We're as good as living through the Great Plague or the or cholera epidemics. Right.
I said this to a couple of friends already. I mean, I'm not that. The situation doesn't really affect me in that much in a way. I can work from home and everything's fine. So I from my point of view, I can say that I find it really interesting to be part of this of this year, of this part of history, because as you say, this is history. One day we can say we've lived through this pandemic, and we've been there. Yeah, so I think this is really interesting.
They will be studying this in years to come. They'll be looking back and they'll be. I always remember my youngest son. He came home from school about 6 years ago, and he came home from school and he said, "Dad," he said, "do you remember Live Aid?" And I said, "William, not only do I remember it, I had a ticket and I was there." And he went, "Were you?" I said, "Yeah, I was at Live Aid." And he went, "Oh." I said, "Why are you asking?" He said, "We're doing it in history." And I went, "No, it's gone. It's not history. That's my youth."
But this is already history. I mean, even when I look back, I lived when 9/11 happened. So this is also something. I mean, we weren't really affected by it. We weren't really there, but it was during our lifetime. So
it was that strange period. And it was and it is. I mean, years to come. I said to my sons, you'll be able to make a living in years to come being a talking head on those documentaries.
Definitely. So coming back to the tours for a moment, was there something like the strangest moment on a tour, the strangest thing that happened during a tour, maybe?
There's been so many, but there is one that really does stick in my mind, and it was on a ghost walk, funnily enough, which very aptly. And there's a story I tell on my Friday night ghost tour of it's called the Cripplegate Ghost. It's about a lady who suffered with narcolepsy,
I know the story. Yes.
Yeah, and I was down, and I was walking. I was doing that tour. It was, I think, about 2009, but it's certainly, over 12 years ago now. And I was doing it by the church, St. Giles Cripplegate, and I finished the story, and we walked away. And the girl came over. She said, "There's a lady who's been taken ill." And so I went back. I went over to her, and she was sitting on the wall, and she wasn't there. She was completely out of it. And I was saying, "Are you all right? You're all right." And she just didn't answer. She was just sitting there. Her eyes were just so we got her down into the recovery position, and then phoned an ambulance.
Yes.
And we waited, and then the ambulance turned up and took her away to hospital. And because we do a booking system, we've got the number. We have people's numbers. So I phoned the number that I asked who's it booked under, because she was with her daughter. Okay. So I phoned her daughter the next day, and I said, "Yeah." She said, "It's really weird." She said, "They got her to hospital." She said, and she was completely out of it. And she said, so she was taken to hospital, and she was completely gone. But the funny thing was, her eyes were open. I mean, that was it. She was just sitting there, just looking. Yeah. But it was there. And she said, and no sooner we got to hospital, than she suddenly just came round and couldn't remember anything of the 2 hours up until that point. And it was so weird. It was at the point where I was telling the story about a woman who'd gone into the narcoleptic trance. So, so I think that's the weirdest thing. That's certainly the weirdest thing that's happened on a tour. Yeah.
I was thinking about maybe something that happened on a ghost tour, but this is definitely the weirdest thing. So would you encourage others to do what you do, tour guiding and doing these kind of things?
Oh, definitely, yeah. I would say to people, it's a fantastic job. Yeah. I mean, there are times with any job. There's the times when you look out of the window and it's pouring with rain, and it's freezing cold, and you think, "Oh, do I really?" But no, once you get there, I mean, the point is, there's not many jobs where people are pleased to see you. But all the time, people have come out to sort of experience stuff, to learn stuff from you, to listen to you. When you're a narcissist, it's a fantastic job, because people just want to listen to you, and you go. So you take them around, and it's delightful. It's such a fantastic job, and of course now as we move more technologically, as we go into things get more technological, people still like the old human touch, and I think that's one thing I think machines will never take over from us, the ability to tell stories that we have it. Artificial intelligence will never be able to do it, because it will never be able to get the emotional response that you can get from telling a story well. So if you like telling stories, if you like people, it's a fantastic job, because if you don't like people, it's a terrible job.
Yeah, but then you probably don't even think about doing it. So, But and what kind of people attend your tours? I mean, Londoners or tourists mainly, or school class?
I get people from all walks of life, all nationalities. I can be doing one day. In a day I could be doing a group of American students doing Dickens in the morning. I can do an afternoon where I might take a group of 12-year-olds who are doing maybe Dickens' Christmas Carol on that, and then in the evening I might do a group of sort of a stag party where people. I'll get people from London. I get people from all over England. I get people from all over Europe. I get people from Americans, Australians, New Zealanders, Japanese. It's just fantastic, and it's amazing, because you get to sort of see different custom, how different people interact. But I think the nice thing is we've all got humanity, and that's such a fantastic link between us all. And I think no matter what nationality, I think that's one of the pities with Brexit over here, that it's made England very sort of we're now that island. We're independent, and I think that's going to be a sad thing. I think for a few years there's going to be, because I mean, there's almost no doubt now that it's going to go horribly wrong for us.
I think so. Yes.
And there's no doubt, and we're going to be looking for somebody to blame. And the blame game's already happening. Oh, it's those nasty Europeans. They just won't let us have what we want. And you're thinking, well, why would they? We it's like getting divorced and saying, she won't let me have what I want.
Right. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Good comparison. Yeah. Very good. Yeah. Sorry. Well, you're even you also had some celebrity guests on your tours, didn't you?
I have over the years. I mean, I am the world's worst for celebrity spotting. I don't recognize people. I mean,
Yeah.
this is a long time ago now, but Joan Rivers turned up on one of my tours, and she was fantastic. You know, I couldn't work out. I didn't recognize her, and I didn't know why all these people were photographing this woman on my tour.
Who's she? Yeah.
And and it was only when we got to the pub halfway through that someone said, "Do you know you've got Joan Rivers on your tour?" And I said, "Really?" And I said, so I went down. Sure enough, it was Joan Rivers. And at the end of it, she came and she said, I did enjoy it. She said, but you know, I don't like. She said, I don't mind it, but it's all the photographs. She said, do you do private tours? So whenever she was in London, she was very into ghosts. She loved ghost stories. And there's a location that she was really fond of, which was the Viaduct Tavern opposite the Old Bailey.
Mm-hmm.
And she used to sort of book me. I used to have to wait whenever she was in London. She'd book a ghost walk with me, and we had to start in the cellars of the Viaduct Tavern because she used to love going there. And I knew the landlord very well then, so I could call him at midnight and say, "Can we come in?" And he'd say, "Yeah, no problem." So we'd go in, we'd get out of the cellars at midnight, and then we'd do these early hour mornings. Bruce Dickinson from Iron Maiden, I've taken him round on a tour. Got a few others as well, but my memory isn't what it was.
I think you've had Green Day on a tour also.
Oh yes, that's right. Yes, I took. They booked me for a Jack the Ripper tour in about 2000. It was when the second Live Aid happened. They were over for the second Live Aid. So whatever year that was.
A couple of years ago, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's about 2006, whatever. But yeah, I got a phone call. Yeah, Warner Brothers phoned me up, and the record label, they phoned me up and said, "Would you take a tour? Can we book a tour for you this evening?" And I said, "Yeah, no problem." And he said, "It's the group Green Day." I'd never heard of them. I'd never heard of Green Day. And I mentioned it. I said to my wife, I said, "I've got some group called Green Day. You know, probably just a new signing or whatever." She said, "Green Day?" And everyone I met as I'm taking Green Day around tonight, they went, "Green Day." And it was really strange because they filmed it actually. They were doing a film of their time in London.
Oh, okay.
So the director met me first and said, "Look, actually, I can't even remember their names now. Is it Billy?"
Yeah, Billy Joel Armstrong, I think.
Yeah. But he said, "Well, I want you to go up to him and say hi." You know, I said, "Well, which one is he?" But it was the strangest tour I've ever done because we passed a few other tours when I was with them, and all the people from that tour were swinging around, chasing us, trying to get photographs of it. Yeah, so that was
I'm gonna, maybe it's up on YouTube. I'm gonna have a look.
Yeah, as I say, it was it was a great evening. I mean, they were lovely. I mean, they were fantastic and really interested in the history as well. That was the great thing, because you know, sometimes find people are, you know, they go, "Oh yeah, I'm just doing it to say I've done it."
But it's a great tour also. So maybe So yeah. So where did you meet Bruce Dickinson? I think you did a program.
He came on the Ghost Walk with me. Yeah, we did a little we did a program that ended up not getting commissioning, but it was to be called what was it, Great British Ghosts, or it's Ghosts of Britain, but it's subtitled Ghoul Britannia.
Oh yeah.
and it was but he came on he came on the Ghost Walk one night, and then we went off on and then we did a few meetups in Chiswick Churchyard to film the film there. And he's fantastic. I mean, he was totally unlike, you know, he had none of the ego that you would think someone like that would have.
Yeah.
And he's a commercial airline pilot as well. So I remember one time he turned up. He'd just flown back from, I think it was Iceland. He'd just flown back from, and he met us, and he still had his pilot but then he changed into the leather rock star jacket. And it was incredible. But yeah, but lovely man, absolutely lovely man.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a big fan, so I can imagine he was a lovely man. Yeah, and I think he lived in Chiswick. I don't think he.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he's got a house he lives in Chiswick. Yeah.
Yeah, I think he moved to Paris this year, but I'm not quite sure.
Oh, he might. Yeah.
I think so. So, in the introduction, I already also mentioned that you're also a writer, and you've written quite a lot of books. So how did that start? How and when did you start writing?
Well, do you know, that's another. I'm one of those people. I've been very lucky in life. And I'd love to say that I spent hours alone in my garret, sort of, lonely, years of years of struggling to get by. But the way that came about was that I got approached by Frommers in New York, who they used to do the sort of $1 a day guide, and they wanted to do a book on walking tours. And I'd got to know some of them quite well because I'd done a trip to New York, and I'd met Joan, who was in charge of Frommer Holidays in the mid 1980s, and she actually took my tours on and put them in their brochure. And in consequence, one of the people who was writing the guide also worked for Frommer Holidays, and they wanted to do a book of walking tours. So they contacted me. They said, would you write the book for us? And I thought, yeah, okay. So I wrote the book and done that. And that got me then into New Holland, who then approached me to write Walking Haunted London. And that was quite a big success, actually. That became quite a good seller in 1999 when it came out. It became a big seller. And so on the back of that, they commissioned me to write a whole series of Haunted Britain books, Haunted Britain and Ireland, then Haunted Castles, Haunted Houses, Haunted Inns. And it was absolutely fantastic because it was just going off and writing. So yeah, and then they said, well, we like those books. Would you do one on Jack the Ripper for us? And then I had lunch with the commissioning editor one day, and she just happened to mention that they were doing a Dickens book, and they'd got someone to write a Dickens book for them. And I begged, I almost went down on my knees and I said, oh, can I do it, please? I just love to do a Dickens book. And she relented and she said, all right, we'll give it to you then. So I got the Dickens book, but it was just all pure luck of the writing. But I like to think I'm good at it, but I do, But I'm one of those people though, I much prefer the research to the writing.
It's a great process too. So yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
And it's one of those things, the people you meet, I mean, Ireland was fantastic. I mean, I just love Ireland, and going around gathering the stories from the, when Irish people tell you their stories, you don't get just in England, you'll get the sort of clipped, I saw a ghost. Yeah. In Ireland, you'll get the whole story and embellished over a few Guinnesses. It's fantastic.
Yes. I can imagine. Yeah. During quarantine, you wrote the diary of Richard Pepys, which was received very well by your readers, I think. You've continued it, I think, over the last weeks, and
I did.
Any plans to continue it further or even publish it one day?
Yeah, I return to him every so often. I've got another installment to come up. It just came about. It was over here when the pandemic was beginning, and Boris was being urged to close down all the pubs, and he was saying, "Oh, I'm not going to close pubs yet. Well, we'll close them maybe next week." And I thought, where have I heard this before? And it suddenly struck me that it was almost from Pepys's diary when the Lord Mayor Thomas Bloodworth refused to accept that the Great Fire of London was as serious as it turned out to be, and he dithered, and that dithering cost London basically, because had he acted firmly there and then the fire would have been extinguished in the early stages. But because he dithered, and I thought, well, that's exactly what Boris has done. So I thought, fantastic. So I thought, I'll and I just did one post on Boris. I think it was the exact quote from Pepys. He cried like a fainting woman. I am trying to close the pubs, but the people will not obey me. So I put that, and that was well received. And then I thought, well, okay. So I started adding to it, and it just went bizarre because then I had the idea of having Donald Trump move in next door to me.
Wonderful,
and it was just, but it basically wrote itself because it was just, just every time that Donald Trump opened his mouth or Boris Johnson opened his mouth, I got new lines. It was fantastic because I didn't have to really write that much.
Right. Yeah. I can imagine it's quite easy to write the next installment, as you say.
And then Boris got ill, and I thought, well, I can't mock him because because he was quite seriously ill with it. And I thought, well, I can't mock him over that. So then it sort of fizzled out a while. But then I thought, a lot's happened since lockdown.
Right.
But funnily enough, reading back on the original ones, the mentality in London's, I think people's mentality towards the virus has changed. I think people have now got to the stage where they've just had enough of it. Where, you know, when lockdown began, when it was happening in March, there was a sort of can-do spirit. Yeah, we're going to do it. We're all in this together. And you remember, all the celebrities were on Zoom playing their piano for us, or teaching us things, or doing things. You don't get that anymore. They've all gone back to their homes in the Bahamas.
Yeah, everybody's fed up. That's
yeah.
It's the same all over the world, I think. But it's really it's true. And you've also done now together with Adam Wood, who's also a writer, and he's the editor of the Ripperologist magazine, or one of the editors, I think.
Yeah.
You did a series of books called Edgar's Walking Guides.
Edgar's Walks, there they are.
And I think they're wonderful. I think 4 volumes are out. And lead you through the Ripper's East End, through Dickens' London, through Postman's Park, and through Haunted London. And I was wondering if this idea, if this came up from the current situation, or was this planned before the virus came along?
No, it came purely out of the virus, out of the current situation. Adam's, he's an excellent publisher. He does, he specializes in crime books, and although he has formed another section now, which does, it's called Little Wing, and he does biographies of musicians and stuff like that. So he's got a few by a DJ over here called Kid Jensen coming out next week. He's done Mike Batt's, he's done one by Mike Batt as well. But he's an ex-publisher, and I phoned him up one day and I said, I mean, I've known Adam for years from various Ripper conferences, and I said to him, Adam, I said, you know, why don't we just form a company and we'll do a series of books of walking tours that can be walking tours, but you can also read them at home as well. And the next stage of that is the videos, because they're coming out next week as well. So the videos of them are coming out so that people can read them, but they can also go and walk the routes as well.
That's good.
When things are closed down. But we wanted it to be as much about the walks, that, you know, again, the ethos of the walking tour, the stories had to be good, but the routes had to be good as well.
Yeah.
And he loved the idea. So we worked. We actually wrote those 4 books in 6 weeks.
Ooh, yeah.
It took us 6 weeks to write, but it's that's when I went out and filmed. That's when I was doing so much of the filming there, and basically we came up with this. It was initially just going to be a guidebook. You know, we're just going to do a series of guidebooks on this. And then one day I called Adam and said, you know, what we need is we need a name.
Yes.
You know, that we need like a figure like Charlie in Charlie's Angels. And Adam came up with the name Edgar. He said, how about Edgar? And then he came out with that story. We thought, well, who could Edgar be? And we thought, well, we'll make him sort of an Edwardian sort of person. Yeah. And he's and we'll give him this straw hat. There is, And so Adam came up with Adam did that logo actually. And he came up with that logo, and I loved it. I thought it's fantastic. So we bought the domain Edgar's Guides and then formed the company. And then we've done the 4. We got another 4 going live next, hopefully in January and February.
Yeah.
So we'll be doing Sherlock Holmes, Shakespeare.
I was wondering exactly, what the next ones are going to be. And I was thinking about probably Sherlock Holmes, maybe Shakespeare. Yeah. We
looked at Sherlock Holmes as the first one, but it's a bit difficult. What we've decided with him is he can't just be a walking tour as Jack the Ripper is, because the Jack the Ripper tour, I have to say, I mean, I walked it again on Wednesday to film it. And I called Adam up. I said, you know, I'd forgotten, because I wrote that one in July. I was walking that one in July. I said, I forgot, just because it is though I say so myself, it's a lovely route. Yes. And I found things on that route. There's a series of cottages just off Hanbury Street called Albert Cottages, Victoria Cottages. And when I found those, I didn't even, I mean, I've been walking the area since 1982. I did not even know those cottages were there. Yeah. And I phoned Adam from there. I said, Adam, this is brilliant.
This is very nice, because there's always more to explore, and there's always more to find out. You probably never get bored. This is
No, you find places, and all the cottages behind the London Hospital, and I found those, and I thought, wow, fantastic. And we thought, well, let's do it as though, because nobody, you know, there have been guidebooks where they've written walks on Jack the Ripper's London, but nobody ever does the Whitechapel murders. Because there's 11 Whitechapel murders victims, so we thought, let's do the 11 victims. And then Dickens came. We thought, well, we've got to do Dickens, you know, around the Inns of Court. And then And then I've just phoned Adam up. I said, I've got a great idea. I said, it's a walk. We don't have to go far on this one. We can do the whole walk in 6. And that was, of course, Postman's Park.
Yeah.
Because the whole wall is there. And yet you've got 52 stories.
Yeah, but this is a great idea. Yeah, I really like the concept of the book.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to the next one, definitely.
That's it, yeah.
Yeah. The first time I really noticed your name was when my mother brought me this book from a trip to London. And she bought it at the London Dungeon, and I think it's brilliant because there's also material in there like the Ripper letters and police reports. And that was the first time that I stumbled across the name of Richard Jones. And I think the Ripper walk is also one of your earliest walks, or the one you've done since back then. So did you become a Ripper expert by doing these tours, or have you been one before?
No, purely through the tours. When I started the tours in 1982, my first one was the Ghost Walk. Then I did Dickens, and I had no interest whatsoever in. I mean, I knew about Jack the Ripper, but I had no interest. I just thought, it's grisly, gruesome murders, and that's it. So I had no interest. And then I started doing the tours. And when you do Dickens, inevitably you come to the East End of London, because Dickens was so immersed in the East End of London.
Yeah.
So I was doing Dickens there. And of course, when you start going to the East End of London, you start coming across Jack the Ripper. The two go hand in hand. Because in those days, what is now the 10 Bells pub was called the Jack the Ripper pub.
Yeah.
So I used to go and have a drink in there and stuff like that. And then I thought, this be a great idea for a tour. And so I started doing the Jack the Ripper tour. And I'll be honest, I mean, I was very pedestrian about it. I mean, my original tour used to go from Tower Hill down to Whitechapel station. I used to do it was a long tour.
Yeah.
Through all the council estates, and then. But then in 1987, I met Martin Fido, and I met him quite funnily enough. A friend of mine had actually gone to Foyle's, the bookshop on Charing Cross Road, and was just looking through the books and saw a new Jack the Ripper book by Martin Fido, The Crimes, Detection and Death of Jack the Ripper. And he picked up the book and was just flicking through it, and this chap stepped out from behind one of the bookshelves and said, "If you buy it, I'll sign it." And it was Martin Fido. Martin Fido. And I got into it. So he then introduced Martin to me, and Martin then started doing guided tours for me. So we did the Jack the Ripper tour together. And it was then through Martin, I met Paul Begg, Keith Skinner, and got to know, and we all became really good friends, and we had many a curry on Friday night in Brick Lane and everything. And Martin used to then go from those curries and go off and do Murder After Midnight on LBC radio. So from that I started thinking, but what I learned very early on about Jack the Ripper was that it's not just about gruesome murder, it's about a whole if you like, it's like the coronavirus at the moment. It's a period in history where the world's media focuses on one aspect, and that's Jack the Ripper, but it also exposes social conditions, history, police history, so you can make of it what you wish to make of it. It's the story that just keeps on giving. Right,
yeah. And I think this is also, I mean, your tour is still going strong, and there's so many Ripper tours. There seems to be such a huge demand, which I think is incredible. And So I think some of the aspects that you just mentioned, they're part of why people are still interested in this case. But what do you think? What's so special about it that people are still interested in it? Do these tours follow these tours? Are interested in the case? Yeah.
I think it's the one tour. It's a funny tour actually, because it's the one tour where the name is sufficient. The name Jack the Ripper, whoever came up with that name, obviously a journalist, but whoever came up with that name came up with if they'd been able to patent that name, put a trademark on it, they'd have been millionaires, well, billionaires twice over. Yeah. But I think that several things make Jack the Ripper popular, because if you think about it, I mean, Jack the Ripper, there've been worse murderers since, there's been more gruesome murders since, there's been, but it's just and I think it's the era that it happened in. It's that foggy Victorian thing. It's a real case, which I think people now, people didn't so much understand it in the past. I think prior to the internet, It's interesting to watch how people's mentality towards it has changed since the advent of the internet, because prior to that, people had an inkling about it and they were interested about it. But really, up until the centenary, 1988, there wasn't that much interest in the Jack the Ripper tour. And then when the centenary happened, it started to get massive coverage. The Michael Caine film came out. That caused a massive thing. And then it just snowballed from there. And I think it was the era, it's people's image of it. People think, it's gaslit, it's this mysterious figure. And of course, the fact he was never caught, it's the ultimate murder mystery.
Definitely, yeah. I think it's, as you say, it allows us to get a glimpse into a historic period, in a very detailed glimpse, if you like, because you have all these reports and you can really see how these people lived. I think this is definitely one part of the fascination. And
I think the nice thing is it's far enough back as well. I think if, for example, we just had an infamous serial killer here called the Yorkshire Ripper, who's just died. And I think the point with him is that if you did tours of him, it's too modern. Whereas Jack the Ripper's far enough back that it's forgotten. I mean, obviously now it has been to an extent. There's a movement to sort of rewrite the story behind it. That the victims weren't prostitutes, that misogyny has led them to being dubbed prostitutes, and it's male dominated thing. But in a way, I think that does the victims a great disservice, because these women were forced into that lifestyle by what society had done to them. I think
you have to really look at history to learn from history. You have to understand these things and put them into context, definitely. And I think what is also interesting is, because you I mean, this might sound harsh, but no one would probably remember these women if they weren't the victims of a killer. So we get to know their lives, we get to know how they lived, how their background, and again, they're part of London's history. And I think you would laugh if someone had told them back then, we will remember you in 130 years or something like that.
If you'd said to, because when you think of how many people in that area had equally harsh lives, horribly harsh lives, who we just don't remember them. And the paradox is we remember them because we remember their names because they were killed by a man whose name we don't know.
And through that, I mean, they basically have a better position in history than the killer who murdered them. So they have more power than the man who acted out his power on them. So I think I think one can see it in that way, and I think this is perfectly fine. So do you have a personal theory about who Jack the Ripper was?
I always went with Kosminski. I always thought Kosminski was a great suspect, purely and simply because Anderson and Swanson both said, well, Anderson doesn't name him, but hints who he was. Swanson does name him. Anderson, I've always, the more I learn about Robert Anderson, the less I trust him, because he never let the facts stand in the way of a good story. But the problem for me is Swanson, because Swanson was he names him as Kosminski in the marginalia, and he had no motive to lie. He wasn't writing that for any. That was notes kept in his personal retirement, in a personal copy of the book that he never meant to make that public. So Swanson seems to have been a very genuine. I mean, Adam Wood. I mean, he's written the biography of Swanson. It's a fantastic biography, and a lot of what And Swanson was a very astute, very honest officer. So Swanson, I think, if it was just Anderson naming him, I would have my doubts. But Swanson naming him, but then again, the more I get to know about Kosminski, the less he seems like a serial killer. He's not homicidal in the asylum, as far as we can tell. The worst the offence he did is that he gets arrested for having an unmuzzled dog on the streets of London on Cheapside. So I don't know. I think, honestly, Thomas Cutbush is a much better suspect. I think Cutbush is the one. He doesn't get the coverage Kosminski gets, but certainly he's a contemporary suspect. He's named by the True Sun newspaper in 1894. He's in Broadmoor Asylum. We know he was homicidal in the asylum because we know he was threatening to rip people up if he had knives, and we know he went to bite his mother's nose off when she went to visit him.
Yes.
So we do know that he was homicidal, and I think a lot more could be done with him. But personally, I do think now the more I look into it, the more I think he was a local person whose name we'll never know.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think so too. And the thing is, we actually don't really want to know who he is, because the mystery would actually go away. But at the same time, so many people are kind of trying to find out who the Ripper was. I think this is a bit funny. Yeah.
I think the great game is name the Ripper, and the amazing thing is that every year a book will come out saying case solved, case closed, case solved, and then the next year another book comes out, case solved, case closed. We'll never know. I mean, we can't know now because we haven't got the evidence.
Right.
If you haven't got any evidence, there's nothing you could take to a court of law and say, yep, that proves 100% without beyond reasonable doubt that person was Jack the Ripper.
Yeah.
And so consequently, you get these wild way out theories that you get people who want to say their great grandfather was Jack the Ripper.
Right.
Personally, I want to keep that quiet. But
yes, yeah, true, yeah, but it's all very entertaining. Some of these theories. So
I always remember Martin Fido telling Martin Fido had lunch with the publishers who published Stephen Knight's book. The Final Solution. And I always remember Martin saying that he was at lunch with them, and he said, but Martin was one of those people who he never held back. If Martin wanted to say something, he would say it. He was a total academic. He was an Oxford academic, and he would say things, and he didn't care. He didn't care how it affected you. He never thought how it might affect you. It was just, as far as he was concerned, that's what and he said, well, he said, you know that book's nonsense. He said to the publisher, that book's nonsense. He said, well, no. He said, you know that Joseph, he's confessed he made it all up, and it's complete nonsense. And apparently the publisher's response to him was, I know, Martin, but it sells.
Yeah. That's the game. That's But yeah, it's still entertaining. And well, how do you, when you do these tours, I mean, as you said, it changed throughout the years. You started at Tower Hill and now you start at Aldgate East. And how do you perceive the East End? Because some people still say that it's still very different. Sometimes you feel as if you're in another city or even in another country. But I would say one can even say that about every area of London in a way. So would you agree with that, or how do you perceive the East End?
I find the East End fascinating because it's. I mean, it's still got the very. People say, I mean, we get comments on the YouTube channel. Some, it's not. It's changed so much. It's not English anymore. But it never was. The East End always was an immigrant district. It was an area that was built on immigration. And I love the vibrancy of it. I love that Whitechapel Road market, the market along Whitechapel Road going down past the Working Lads Institute. It's fantastic when you go down there. You get the streetcars, you get the smells, you get the aromas. What I find fascinating about it is, in some ways, it's still more or less as it was in 1888. Everybody thinks that it was a poor area. They always say, that it was it was an area, but on the whole, Whitechapel was respected. Whitechapel wasn't a poor area. Whitechapel was quite a respectable area. Yeah. You had pockets in Whitechapel that weren't respectable, and you had pockets in Whitechapel that were completely poverty-stricken, particularly the evil quarter mile around Commercial Street, George Street, etc. But a lot of the Whitechapel citizens, or the Whitechapelonians at the time, were furious at the way the press was portraying Whitechapel.
Sure.
Canon Barnett made the point. He wrote in, he said, look, parts of Whitechapel are more respectable than the West End of London, where their vices are hidden behind great wealth. But most of it was hard-working people. What I find fascinating is, Tower Hamlets, where it is what probably the most, I think it is the most poverty, it's got the highest rate of poverty and child poverty. Certainly in London. I think it might even be in England that it's got that massive poverty. It's got high incidences of TB. I think it's got one of the highest coronavirus things at the moment. So you've got this area of great poverty, and yet the area where Jack the Ripper was, the area around Commercial Street, so Fournier Street, Wilkes Street, Princelet Street, is it's now massively wealthy. Those houses, houses that were slum dwellings in 1888.
Yes.
Now you wouldn't get any change out of 1.5 million, maybe 1.8 million for those houses.
Yes. Yeah.
So you've got all these really wealthy people living there, but around them, I mean, one thing that amazes me when you walk along Wilk Street, you can pass these £1 million houses turn into Puma Court, and there'll be junkies shooting up on one of the steps. and but it's also British the way they do it. I was there with a couple the other in just before lockdown, and I was walking them around, and we ran, and they were sitting on the step, and they were, oh, terribly sorry, and they sort of turned and hid themselves shooting up. And the guy said, oh, so that could only happen in London. You get polite junkies.
Yeah, true. Yeah, he's probably right. Yeah. So basically, there's still and something left of the character, or what we believe to be the character of 1888.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, and there's still streets that have the atmosphere of 1888. When you walk down them, I mean, Fornia Street, that area there, and going out towards the docks as well. When you get out towards the docks, I mean, one thing I did like about the Edgar guide was we went out to St George's in the East, and we did the town hall and the mortuary where Elizabeth Stride's body was taken to, and where the photograph of her was taken, that famous photograph. So. I think that's I mean, it is changing. So I mean, I remember when I started, you still had the prostitutes in the area, which you don't get that anymore. As far as I know, you don't get that anymore anyway. But I always remember my favourite story to point out to the groups was when I was going round was that the prostitutes always used to stand by the speed bumps, because if they stood on by the main roads, the police would arrest them. When the cars slowed down. The police might arrest the drivers for curb crawling, but if they stood by the speed bumps, the cars had to slow down, and at which point the cars would then lift up as they went over the speed bump, and then they could wave as if they wave to them, and then the drivers would sort of signal, and then they go and get in the cars a little further down the street.
Yeah.
But I used to see that they used to come into the town. Well, the Jack the Ripper pub, as it then was, that used to be their break stop, and they'd all come in, and you got to know them, and they'd shout things to you like "Say him again tonight, love, when you're finished." and it was like a community. There was like a community, and I think that aspect of it's gone now. That the local pubs are not community pubs. In those days, you had places like the Alma, you had the Seven Stars on Brick Lane, you had the Frying Pan. That was still a pub. That was run by an ex-boxer when I started. He was a great old guy. I remember his blue. He either used to wear a blue or a yellow cardigan, and he'd be behind the bar, and all the locals were in there, and all the locals had worked for the Craze. Oh yeah, I remember the Craze.
Yeah, sure.
I used to work for the Craze, and everything. And all the women used to say, "My mum met Jack the Ripper." I always remember the number of times I get told, "My mum met Jack the Ripper," but he let her off because she was a nice girl.
Yeah. Certainly, yeah, but this is gone at least as far as I can say. I've been there back then, but it's not like that anymore.
Yeah, I mean, that aspect of it's gone, and the pubs are not local pubs anymore. They're pubs that you. I mean, I think the one that's closest to what it used to be still like is the Pride of Spitalfields. I think that's still got to an extent community in there, but more and more you're getting more of the internet companies now moving into Princelet Street, Hanbury Street. That section, but that's what the East End does. It changes, and the people change, the clientele of the pubs change, but the atmosphere is still there. It's still. And a nice thing about places like that is they don't have jukeboxes or fruit machines. They are very much locals pubs, and it's conversation.
I agree. I agree with that. I still find it kind of exciting, walking for example, from Mitre Square to Goulston Street, also because you kind of get a bit of a glimpse into the network of streets and alleys. And what do you think and feel when you walk these streets? Has this changed since you've first started, or is there still some kind of fascination, or has it changed, and is it just a job, if you like?
I still get that thrill, that thrill of walking those streets.
Yeah.
I mean, that area, going from Mitre Square, I mean, Mitre Square has changed a lot in the last 3 years, etc. And all those buildings on the route have changed, but it's still that intricate, you know, like twisting around the corners, and you know, you twist to you go down Stony Street, you go down, you pass White Kennet Street, and then down New Goulston Street, and then suddenly there's the block of flats where the clue was found, that the apron was found in the doorway.
Yeah.
And it's still a thrill to me to do that, to walk around. That's the nice thing. Again, I keep going back to it. That's the nice thing about the Edgar guide is on the tours themselves, we go the opposite way. We do the doorway first and then go to Mitre Square. Whereas the way we do it now is we go from Mitre Square and we follow that route.
Yeah.
And coming up to Mitre Square as well, we stop off at the place where Charles Ludwig, as we come up Minories, Charles Ludwig, well, it's not the place because that place has been demolished. Yeah. But there's still a little alleyway there towards the top, which, funnily enough, I didn't know until I knew nothing about this alleyway. And I've just Three Kings. I've just forgotten the name of it.
Yeah, but Three Things, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was but it's where the police officer was walking past and he heard a woman scream. Right. And he went in and he found a man with a woman. He said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Nothing." And he sent the man away. And then the woman said, "Oh, he didn't give me a fright when he pulled that knife out." And of course, that poor policeman realized he might have had Jack the Ripper there and then. He'd let him go. And as it turned out, it was the German barber Charles Ludwig. But that passageway, when it was Adam Wood who told me about that. When we were doing the book, he said we should put maybe that passageway that him and Neil Bell had found it when they were down there, and they'd done and I said, I don't know that passage. I said, "Are you sure?" He said, "Yeah." And I remember walking there. When I was walking it, I thought, "There's no passageway here." And then just before you get to Aldgate High Street, there's this narrow passageway on the right. And then, as I say, and Adam was right. He'd actually got it.
I'm gonna visit it the next time that I'm
there.
Yeah.
And it's so sinister. I filmed it the other day. I went down there and filmed it, and it really is. It's when you walk into it, you think, "Ooh," and you just hear the traffic just disappears.
So why do you think we kind of still try to recreate this, relive this? I mean, the people who join the tours, they also do the same thing in a way. Why do you think is that?
I think it's just a fascination. I mean, I've always been puzzled by it's always something, you know, because obviously when you're marketing something like a tour, the first rule of marketing and promotion is know your audience.
Yes.
But it's almost impossible to know a Jack the Ripper audience because there is not a typical audience that you should be aiming for. It's something that's universal. And I think I think it is the name, but B, I think that people genuinely it's a mystery that everybody's been with. It's been through people's lives. You know, everybody's had it perhaps since childhood about Jack the Ripper, and so consequently, and I don't think there's any other serial killer or sequence of murders that have that fascination for people. Yes. And a lot of time, it's not even about the murders themselves. It's about what the murders throw up, what they reveal about people. Yes. And I mean, one of the things that I remember when 1988, there was a lot of controversy over the Jack the Ripper pub, and several people, feminist groups, marched on the pub. And fair enough. I mean, Ernie, who was the landlord then, he did go a bit over the top in the centenary, like dyeing his beer red and selling the Ripper tipple and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think you said that. Yeah, I've read that in
the
books. Yeah.
So he did, and that's why the name was changed back by the brewery to the 10 Bells from the Jack the Ripper. But one of the things that's interesting on the tour is if you actually come on a typical Jack the Ripper tour, most of the clients are women. Women are fascinated by the subject.
Yeah,
that's a paradox that I've never quite understood. When we look at the bookings, you know, mostly it will be done. Now, whether it's because if it's a couple taking it, the woman's booked the tour, I don't know, but certainly, you know, yeah, you get the people in the offices and they are fascinated by it, and honestly, I can't. It's one of the things I'd love to explain it, but I can't.
No, but yeah, neither can I. Maybe they want to. I don't know. It's interesting, yeah. But you already said that I believe you distinguish between the Whitechapel murderer and Jack the Ripper, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much so. And I think we have to. I used to put a question on the Facebook page. Was you know, if we found out who wrote the letter, would we know who Jack the Ripper was? And so many people said no, never. You know, because because the letter wasn't written by Jack the Ripper. And I'd always go back and said, well, it was written by Jack the Ripper because he signed it Jack the Ripper. And of course, the point there is that whoever wrote that letter was not the Whitechapel murderer.
No.
It was Jack the Ripper, but it wasn't the Whitechapel murderer.
Yeah.
Because the letter's what gave the murderer his name.
Yeah.
So consequently, we have to sort of separate the Whitechapel murders from the name Jack the Ripper, because they were under Jack. Now, whoever the murderer was, he certainly wasn't named Jack the Ripper.
No. But the name helped to turn the murders into a legend and into creating this big thing. Do you think any of the letters were genuine? Anything, or maybe the From Hell letter?
Yeah, personally, I don't. There are people who say, yeah, the From Hell letter was genuine because the kidney was Catherine Edgar's kidney. They often quote Sedgwick Saunders as well, the curator at the Pathological Museum at London Hospital, saying, well, he said it was her kidney, and all that talk about Bright's disease and everything. He never said any such thing. He said he couldn't say whether it was male or female. Yeah. And he said it had been preserved in spirits of alcohol. Of course, the problem for us today is that we don't have the kidney anymore, so there's no way we can look at it and say so. Of all the letters, that's the one that many people think was genuine. Personally, I don't think it was. I think it was a medical student hoax. But maybe,
and I think Mr. Lasky also had some kind of stalker, one or two. So maybe it was one of them. Or
the thing about Lusk was that a lot of people forget is that he was in the news an awful lot from the first 2 weeks in October. He was petitioning the Home Secretary Henry Matthews for a reward, and he wrote to Queen Victoria, and the newspapers, because he'd written to the Queen, the newspapers were fascinated, and his name was in the papers a lot. So, and then he got this stalker around about the 10th of October. He got this strange man who kept turning up, and and a lot of people forget he actually got another letter a few days before that there was another letter addressed. And he did so that, but the fact was that letter had the kidney in it, and so that's what caused the debate and what causes the debate today. Personally, I don't think it was, but as I always say, the one certain thing about Jack the Ripper is nothing is certain.
Yeah, that's true. Is there something like one fact or witness account or anything like that in the whole case that baffles you the most, where you really want to find out what really happened?
I think I think Joseph Lavender. I think Lavender and Schwartz as well, perhaps Israel Schwartz, who saw the man attack the woman. Schwartz I found interesting because of the presence of the second man as he crossed the street, and the shout of Lipsky, and then apparently the second man followed him, albeit the evidence suggests the police did trace the second man and rule him out of having any involvement. Lavender I find interesting because I think Lavender, and again, Anderson doesn't say who the witness was who identified his suspect, the low-born Polish Jew, but he does say that he was identified. And again, Swanson, although he says the witness wouldn't testify, he again doesn't name the witness. Personally, I think that witness was Joseph Lavender. I do know from research that later on, Lavender was being called in the 1890 when they got other suspects in. Lavender was certainly still on the police radar. What perplexes me about Lavender is Lavender always said he would not be able to identify the man again were he to be confronted by him, and yet he does give quite a detailed description of him. So that's what I find it. I would actually like to see what Lavender actually did say.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I think. What do you think? What did Israel Schwartz see? Did he see the attack on Elizabeth Stride, or was it something else? I mean, this is a very confusing moment in this evening, and she was seen with various men over the course of the night.
I mean, her last night is quite well testified. You know, people see her. She gets seen by the two men outside the Bricklayers Arms on Settle Street. She's in the Queen's Head pub at 6:30 in the evening. So she's here, and then she's seen by the man by Israel Schwartz. I think he probably did see the attack beginning. Because her body was found 15 minutes later. So I think for two such violent attacks to take place in that time on the same woman in the same location. So I think he did see the early attack. But it's that second man, Israel Schwartz, when he crosses the road, he doesn't want to get involved. Then apparently the man attacking the woman shouts Lipsky. Schwartz thought to the second man, although he couldn't be certain. And then the second man appeared to follow him, and Schwartz panicked and ran. Because the problem with Schwartz is that he didn't speak English.
Right.
So what he did was done through an interpreter.
Yeah.
So again, we don't know, was the interpreter filling in the blanks with Schwartz? So I said there's all sorts of problems. But I think because of course what he suggests is that there was that second man. Why didn't the second man go and intervene? Because there's two men who see this woman being attacked.
Yes.
And neither of them appear to want to help her. They both appear to leave the scene and left her being attacked by the man. Yes. And so it'd be interesting to know what the police thought about that. I mean, did the police think, well, why did you leave the scene? And it seems the police did trace that second man, and they ruled him out. So, but of course we don't know because we haven't got the evidence.
And this is all, this is all part of the mystery, and I think it's just like the movements of Mary Kelly on her last night and the site when she was seen on the morning of the murder, when she actually must have been dead already, or probably was dead, and was someone else. I think this is all part of the big mystery.
Yeah, there are so many mysteries in it that, and the problem with it's like a pimple or a sore on your face. If you keep picking it, you think, oh, well, if I just look into this, I'll solve it. Yeah. And then you look into it, and you've picked the sore, and it's got bigger, and you think, oh no.
Right. Yeah. That's true. Do you think the message in Goulston Street came from the killer?
No, I think the message was already there. The apron certainly did, because it was Catherine Edwards' apron. I think it's a complete coincidence he dropped the apron in the doorway. And the thing is, again, what a lot of people don't realize is that there was a lot of anti-Semitic graffito appearing over the streets. So it was there'd been a bit in the wake of Annie Chapman's murder, and it wasn't just one-off. And I think it was, and that block of flats was lived in exclusively by Jewish families, almost exclusively. And I just think somebody had scrawled it on the wall. Police officers who saw it say it looked faded, as though it had been there for some time. I think had the apron been dropped in another doorway, we'd not be thinking of it, of the graffito. I think it was a giant red herring. But,
probably. Do you think the apron was left there after 2:20 a.m., which means that the killer must have lurked there in the area for quite a long time?
I think
Alfred Long didn't find the apron when he was in Goulston Street, like 30 minutes or something.
And neither, interestingly enough, neither did Daniel Helst, Inspector Daniel Helst from the City Police, because he was the first thing he did when the body was found, he was orchestrating a plainclothes patrol around Aldgate, St. Botolph's Church, and he went to the square, and he then ran off and he searched all the streets to Goulston Street, and he said he'd gone through Goulston Street and the apron hadn't been there. And Long said he passed through at 2:20 and the apron hadn't been there. So that begs the question: what was the killer still in the area at the time? And of course, the other problem he might have been. There's a lot of dark alleyways to hide in down there. But so certainly, and there's a possibility that it was there and they missed it. But then why would Long miss it at 2:20 and then find it at 2:55? So it's But again, that illustrates exactly what happens when you start looking into something. You create a bigger mystery.
Right. Yeah. Would you have wanted to live back then?
I would have. I probably would have hated it. Well, I don't know. This is another thing I think we have a problem with. Is we tend to look back. There's a tendency now to judge the past by the norms of the present.
Sure.
I mean, we look at the lifestyle of the people in the area. Like you look at the victims and you think, oh, horrible lives they led, whatever. But on the whole, you look at them and they were quite, they were alcoholics, whatever. But they seem to have been quite jolly. You look at Mary Nichols, Elizabeth Stride certainly was. They seem to be, and it's basically the lifestyle you're living. As humans, we adapt to our situation. And of course, I think a lot of people, I think if I went back, I would hate it. But if I was born into it, I'd probably just grow used to it. And it's probably quite quite a hard life.
Yeah.
But it was probably quite, there's a lot of colourful lot of colour in the streets. Going to the street markets and Whitechapel Road. I would love to go down Whitechapel Road on a Saturday night when the gas lamps were flaring and all the waxworks were open and everything.
That would have been, must have been, quite interesting. I agree with that. Yeah.
The smell would have knocked me flat, but
yeah, that's true. So I mean, and the murders or Jack the Ripper, if we distinguish between them, he's still kind of present in the East End since then. And what would you say? How did the murders shape London, or shape the image of London, or maybe the East End in a way? Did they shape the image?
I don't think they did much. I mean, it's often said that the Jack the Ripper murders changed the conditions in the area, which is completely untrue, because they didn't. They certainly highlighted conditions in the area, but conditions really didn't. I mean, the London County Council had just been founded, and it was the founding of the London County Council that started to change the conditions, because you had a lot of socialist and Labour politicians who became quite prominent in the East End politics, and they were the ones who started to change it. Jack the Ripper didn't really change anything in the area. I think what Jack the Ripper did was create a sort of imagery of the East End, which is still with us. That's why we think the East End as being the slumland, because of the Jack the Ripper murders, because that's what got highlighted. Whereas there were places in Southwark, Marylebone, Notting Hill, which are probably as bad, if not worse, than the East End of London. Yeah, he represented every fear, basically. That was the personification in a way of every fear of the East. Exactly, and every prejudice about the East End. That was Jack the Ripper. So he almost picked the perfect area, if it was by choice.
So maybe the murders didn't shape London that much, but the other way around. The murders were shaped by London in a way.
And a lot of people at the time said that it's the conditions in the area that have created this murderer, this monster.
Yeah, definitely. So you also did a documentary about the Ripper murders, and you've been an advisor and a guest on TV productions, not only about the Ripper, but also about haunted London programs, for example. What was the most exciting program you've worked on?
I mean, Unmasking Jack the Ripper, the document, because largely because I co-produced that with Mark Ubsdell. That's two of us producing it, and I did enjoy that, because that was nice to sort of to have complete creative control over it, which the ones I've done for the Discovery of History Channel, I haven't had complete creative control, and of course you never know how it's going to be edited. So you might make a really valid point. You might make a really valid point, but it gets edited out at the editing stage, and you're left saying something totally stupid. You think, I didn't say that. But I think that was nice because I had creative control. But I think I did an episode of not an episode. I did a Most Haunted. It was a Most Haunted live in 2005. It was the last one I did. And that was quite an experience, because we did it. I think we did it over 4 nights over Halloween, but it was the hunt for Jack the Ripper over Halloween. That was fascinating. That was really good, because it was live TV, and it was done with a medium, Derek Akora, who would go out and do the investigations on location, and I'd be in the studio sort of picking up stuff. That was it. I mean, I will say that. And the whole 4 days, Jack the Ripper was conspicuous by his absence. we didn't really get much, but it was quite interesting to actually watch location live, and again see the fashion. I think that was one of the best watched of the TV shows that Halloween. It was watched all over the world. Millions tuned in. I think we broke 1 million viewers on that one. So it went through that, which was, I mean, normally I think we'd get about 300,000, maybe 200,000, 300,000. It varied over the night, but that one we really did pick up the views on that, and it was and the interesting thing about it was the internet hadn't quite. The internet was just started to catch on then, so we didn't quite have, I certainly didn't have access to the internet, and I became very aware that every fact that I was looking at, which I had to know, when it came to me. People at home were Googling it. That was quite nerve-wracking. But I thought what was quite interesting about it was that you always knew. We didn't really have emails as such. We had faxes coming in, so people would send faxes in questions, and you always knew when the pubs had closed on those, because 11:30 there would be an abundance of faxes coming in, but they'd be obscene. You know, they'd make really and really critical, because everyone had just got home from the pub and switched on.
Yeah,
You get the most amazing faxes come through. But I mean, some we just couldn't. They were just too rude to air on live TV. We couldn't do it.
Yeah,
we get closed down by Ofcom.
Yeah, but this I can imagine this. But must have been some time ago when there was still fax machines.
yeah. I mean, that was 2005 I left, and it's
okay.
Funnily enough, though, people still remember those Most Haunteds. That, as I say, I did it 2003 to 2005.
Okay.
And we went all over the country, and it was fantastic. It was a brilliant time. As I say, it was. But say on that one, Jack the Ripper was certainly conspicuous by his absence.
Maybe because it was Jack the Ripper and not the Whitechapel murderer.
That was it. Yeah.
A historian once said that London writes us as we write about it. Would you agree with that statement?
Yes, I think London is. When you start writing about London, the story, London's its own writer. You can start writing about a specific location or topic in London, but inevitably you get taken over. It almost possesses you, and it's a bit like automatic writing. The spirit of London goes through you and sets the story.
Right.
Yeah. So no, I'd agree 100%.
All right. Yeah. So and as a tour guide, walking the city is part of your everyday business and has been for decades. And would you agree with that walking is one of the best ways to approach London?
Yeah, it's the only way.
I think so too.
Well, yeah. When you walk, you really get the feel. And the nice thing about London is that London isn't London. It's made up of lots of tiny locales and villages. And that came really across when I was writing Walking Dickensian London, because I started off in the Far East, and I just spent 12 weeks walking across London every day. And it's when you do it like that, you start to see how the different areas, the different flavors, and that's the beauty of it. And you can't do that on a bus. You can't do that in a car. You certainly can't do it on the underground. You've got to walk it, and get lost. You've got to get lost in London. Don't just spend a couple of days not knowing where you're going. Just set off walking. You can't really get lost in London, because sooner or later you'll come to an underground station or a bus stop. Yeah. But just set off and walk. I mean, check the areas you're going to walk through first, of course, just to make sure that they are safe to walk through. I mean, this place I certainly went. But no, on the whole, you'll make some fantastic discoveries if you just get lost in London.
Yeah, definitely. I think so too. There's this great saying, maybe I even have this from one of your videos of, I think it's Dr. Johnson: when a man is tired of London, he's tired of life. Have you ever become tired of London in all these years?
No, so that's why I'm still alive. I don't think you can get tired of it. I think it's because what does he say? He goes on to say, "For there is in London everything everything that life requires," and it has, because once you're bored with one aspect of it, if you think, then it's a bit like The Walking Dead. You get bored of one bit, but then you find another bit that you turn a corner, you think, wow, and then it's picked up again.
Well, yeah. Let's just hope you never get tired, but I don't think you will.
That's it.
I have some final questions to finish our conversation. I mean, I could talk with you for hours, but maybe on another time on another topic. So the first question would be, what is your favorite place in London? Or do you have a favorite place in London?
I do. I would say it's got to be the Inns of Court.
Oh yeah,
I just adore it. I mean, of all the places, I mean, London in general I love, but the Inns of Court, I just think they're so special. And there's I don't think you find anything like them anywhere else in the world. You've just got that knot of that little area. It's almost an enclave. It's almost a collegiate. It's almost like being in Oxford or Cambridge, but it's the lawyers' district around Chancery Lane and Holborn. And I think just walking through the Inns of Court, so I'd say the Inns of Court. And of the Inns of Court, I would say my favourite two are Lincoln's Inn and Middle Temple.
Okay, yeah, good to know. Are there still places you want to research? I mean, you said that there's always more to explore, but is there something where you say, I still want to find out more about this area or this place?
Oh, very much so, yeah. Notting Hill's an area, Portobello Road, that area. It's one area for about 15 years now. I've been thinking I must get to know more about Notting Hill. I mean, I've done some filming around there and I've walked around there. Yeah. But no, I mean, I love that area. And you've got, and then you've got the little part of Holland Park where you've got all the stars. Jimmy Page lives down there. You've got Robbie Williams living opposite. Yeah. In fact, one of my favorite stories there is that Robbie Williams took over Michael Winner's house. That's now Robbie Williams' house. It used to be the home, funnily enough, of Luke Fields, who was the illustrator who got the commission when he was a very young illustrator. He got the commission to do the illustrations for Charles Dickens' The Mystery of Edwin Drood. And when he was delighted. He wrote to his mother saying, my ship is in, I am now. And of course he did, I think he did one or two, and then Dickens dropped dead. So he never got, that was Luke Fields. But my favorite thing about the house is when Robbie Williams bought it, Jimmy Page lives opposite. And Jimmy Page actually blocked him for planning permission for some of the extensions because it would make too much noise.
Yeah.
And I thought the idea of Jimmy Page, too much noise.
It's too loud. It's too loud. Yeah. Okay, why not? Yeah. My final question would be: can you name 3 Londoners that you would have dinner or a drink with from throughout history? From history,
Charles Dickens would definitely be one. Charles Dickens has got to be one.
Yeah.
Do you mean born Londoners or people who lived in London? Because Charles Dickens wasn't born in London.
No, not necessarily born. Maybe.
Okay, so Charles Dickens would be one, Dr. Johnson would be another, and William Shakespeare would be my third.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, that's a good choice. I'll pass it on.
That's it. Yeah. I'd love to have a drink with William Shakespeare. I think William Shakespeare would be a great drinking buddy. Dr. Johnson, I wouldn't be able to have a chat with him because he'd just hold the conversation, dominate it.
Yeah.
And Charles Dickens, it'd be several drinks with Charles Dickens because he could never sit still for long enough to have a couple of pints with. He'd be off to the next pub.
Yeah, you can do a pub crawl with him.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Richard.
Thank you.
Wonderful conversation. As I said, if you like, I would love to have you back, maybe for another conversation.
I'd love to. Yeah.
On another topic, maybe Dickens, maybe Haunted London. We'll see. For the viewers out there, these are Edgar's walking guides. I'm going to show them again. These are Richard's newest books, together with that he did together with Adam Wood, and I think, as I said, that they are brilliant. And if you ever wanted to go to the old curiosity shop, that is not the old curiosity shop immortalized by Charles Dickens, or meet the ghosts of the fires of Smithfield, these are your guides. And of course, there is one book about Jack the Ripper's East End. Don't you think people might not join your tours now and instead do the tours?
Yeah, that was something we did discuss when we came up with the idea, because Adam did say to me, well, what if they don't come on the tours? But to be honest, I think the book complements the tour.
Yeah.
Because the tours by nature, it's confined to an area, whereas that book isn't. That book is a 4-hour tour of the East End of London, and you go everywhere in that book.
Yeah.
And the idea is that you can do it in your own time. You can do it as one complete walk if you want. I mean, I've done it now 3 times as one complete walk. It is exhausting, but it's doable. But you can also come back to it as well. I've also done it this way, where you can. The nice thing is that you can do the section Aldgate East to Whitechapel. Then you're at Whitechapel Station, so you can take a break and go have a day off. Come back to Whitechapel Station, pick it up, do Whitechapel Station through to Cable Street, and then you've got the Shadwell Docklands Light Railway there. Come back next day and then go Cable Street through to Aldgate East. Go to Aldgate, then go to Aldgate Station, and then do the last section on your final day. So you could do it over 4 days if you wanted.
That's true. And the nice thing is that you include these lovely pubs where you can have a drink on the way, or even start or stop. So yeah.
Although there is one pub that is on there. It's on there. It's done as a recommendation, but it's a pub called the Good Samaritan, which is behind the London Hospital. Yeah. And when I was doing it, I was bursting for the toilet. I was desperate for the toilet, and I nipped in and I said, "Could I just use your toilet?" And she said, "No, sorry. it's COVID restrictions. You can't.
Ah,
I said, well, just the toilet though. She said, no. She said, you might customers. I said, you haven't got any customers. She said, yeah, but I can't let you. I said, okay. It just struck me as I was leaving. I was going to turn back and say, you're not a very well-named pub, are you? The Good Samaritan. So,
definitely, yeah.
But it is a nice pub, and it makes a nice break. And there's lots of pubs on on the route that, and of course we finish it in the 10 Bells, where you can just go to the 10 Bells, and as we say, you can raise a glass to the memory of the 5 women.
Right. Yeah. I remember when I was there for the first time. It felt a bit special, although it's more of a, you do it for yourself, not really because there is anything left. But yeah, it is a bit special. Yeah. So as I said, if you, dear viewers, are interested, go and visit Richard's tours. They are wonderful, and he offers them as virtual tours right now. I'm going to put a link to his websites into the description, and I'm also going to put a link, I wanted to mention them, to 1 or 2 of your poems and videos.
Oh, thank you.
Because you also write poems, and there are some
I do indeed
on YouTube.
Yes, indeed, yeah.
And in the Haunted London book, I think there are also two poems of yours.
That's it. You see, there's no stopping me. I have to get everything I write in.
And you do it perfectly fine, perfectly well. So thank you very much, Richard.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. And yeah, it was great to have you today.
It's been an absolute pleasure.
Time and place.
Thank you.
All right.